Hi, welcome back to the IMST YouTube channel. So now we're going to go through the theory of the upper cross syndrome. So on one of the previous videos we had spoken about the lower cross syndrome that affects the hips, affects the muscles of the hips and affects the pelvis and the pelvic girdle. So now we're going to go through and see how that looks and how it presents for the upper body as in the upper cross syndrome. Again, this is taken from Vladimir Janda's theory. It's his approach on looking at postural versus phasic muscles, how it affects the body and the problems then that come with that. And for us as therapists is how then can we reverse that and how can we help the client with their posture and with pain. So as we had with the lower cross syndrome, the axis is through the hip or the side of the hip here. So for the upper, we're going to take the ball and socket joint again to the glenohumeral joint of the shoulder. So we're going to take our axis as if we were going to go straight through the center of the shoulder. So this is where our cross is going to come from here. So we had on the lower body, we had the cross coming from here to the ball and socket joint of the hip. So again, we're going to take the ball and socket joint of the shoulder and create our cross coming here. So if we're to divide those muscles up now, we're looking at deep cervical flexors. So this is not the sternocleidomastoid, this is not the scalenes. When we talk about the deep cervical flexors, we're talking about deep muscles, they're called cervical core muscles, they're behind the trachea, in at the front of the cervical spine. Now there's a group of 4 muscles there, don't worry about the names of them, we're just going to group them and call them deep cervical flexors. So that's what's on the front upper. So on the back upper then, we'll be looking at the levator scapula, we'll be looking at splenius capitis, we'll be looking at, sorry, and we will be looking at the upper trap. So again, upper trap, splenius capitis, levator scapula. Okay, so if we're going to come to the other side of our cross, we're going to come to the front, we're going to be looking at pec major and pec minor. Pec minor, as we know, is a hard one to palpate, but we have the pec major on the front. If we were to come behind the lower part of our cross, we're going to be looking at mid-traps, rhomboids, and some of the rotator cuff muscles. Okay, so what have all of these got in common? How can we put these into groups? So again, here is our cross. So the pec major and the pec minor are postural muscles. Anything that's at the back, upper, splenius capitis, upper trap, levator scapula, also postural muscles. And we know by Vladimir Janda's approach, postural muscles tend to get shortened, tight, over-facilitated and overworked. Postural muscles tend to get weak, tend to get overstretched and tend to get a little bit lazier. So when somebody has a problem with the upper cross syndrome, this is generally what seems to happen. So this may be somebody who drives a lot. So think of that the arms are stretched forward over a steering wheel, shoulders being internally rotated. Here we have a stretch coming on here on the rotator cuff muscles. And then this could also round the shoulders, or stop them, round the shoulders. So now we have a tight pec minor, relax there. We can have an internally rotated shoulder, so we now have a tight pec major as well, okay? So when this happens long-term over time, so we have this going on, a little bit of roundedness going on, so what happens then is we tend to get a little bit of kyphosis. So the rhomboids, the mid-traps here are allowing that to happen because the pec major and pec minor here are really tight. So then what happens with the head? So the head then just is drawn forward. So the head might come into a forward position here and the chin might come up. So we're going to relax this a little bit there. So the chin might come up, so we can see how splenius capitis, upper traps, levator scapula here getting very tight, pulling the head back into a slightly extended position here. So to reverse this from a therapist point of view, hands-on, we can do our STRs or METs for all of the postural muscles, but we need to give some strengthening exercises for the phasic muscles. So again, stretching, so we're going to be strengthening. So anything strengthening is going to be working on our rhomboids and our mid-traps here, and also we need to work on the deep cervical core. So what this will do is it'll lower the chin, it'll bring the chin back slightly, it'll help the shoulders to drop, and we can bring the shoulder back into its perfect position here. Postural muscles aren't becoming too tight, and this is that keeps the client nice and balanced and in alignment as well. So again, just relax there for me. So on your postural assessment, what you're looking for is the forward head posture. So the head might be forward, maybe have a raised chin, bring your head back there. You might have slight internal rotation of the shoulder. You could also have a slight roundedness of the shoulder. You could also end up with a little bit of kyphosis here, relax there for me. Or you might notice a dowager's hump at the C6, C7, T1 area here. So the dowager's hump, that'd be puffy bit of inflammation that's put a kind of accumulates on the back here purely from a protective point of view, because it's protecting that area there. Okay, so again, just to recap for your rehab at home, you need to have stretching exercise for the pec major, for the pec minor. You need to have stretching exercise for levator scapula, upper traps, venous capitis. Do some deep cervical core activation strengthening exercises, and also some strengthening exercises for the rhomboids and the mid traps. Okay, this should relieve pain for the client, relieve any distress. Things you might notice would have been the pins and needles down the arm, weakness in the arm, anything travelling up into the head, could be maybe headaches, any issues with the eyes, any issues with the ears, could be nerve impingement here as well, and it also makes this area kind of very weak. Also, that leaves the client prone for things like adhesive capsulitis, supraspinatus tendinitis, etc. Okay, so I hope that has helped to understand upper cross syndrome. Again, Vladimir Janda's approach is worth Googling as well, very interesting. He designed the postural versus phasic muscles. So plenty of theory there to be getting on and researching. Okay, enjoy.